Just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. If you don't know what any of those means, or you're in your car and wondering what the heck to do about it, don't worry. We'll be up in all the places that we can be, including on air. And yeah, don't be on your phone when you're in your car. That's just good policy. So if you are driving out there, pretty decent conditions, it does seem like today. Definitely better than we had a little bit over the weekend. Trans Mountain, yeah, just always a mess. But the political implications that we've discussed a little bit about coming more into light this week after, well, the fizzle, or depending on your perspective, if you were wanting bad things to happen, it fizzled out, or if you were wanting it to continue apace and not have serious disruptions, went great. Or at the very least didn't go badly, which was the most important part. And some of the political commentators, as we have a Leroy Chuck joining us over on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, didn't go badly. And a lot of the commentary coming out that that's all that was really needed for incumbents and people who were supposed to have been fixing the system. So again, it's kind of a weird situation that we're talking about. Things went well, therefore this means bad things for other people, but hey, we're in an election year. So we're going to be checking in on a bunch of those, as we also have Ed Clore joining us over there as well. 10-4 to you too, good buddy. As we're talking about a whole lot of elections, we're just under a month out now from Election Day itself, a week away from the start of early voting. So this week we are going to be launching into some of our candidate interviews. We're going to be focusing on those primarily competitive races on this ballot, because there are a number of candidates, too many in total. A lot of the judge races are just intractable for the average person. It's important enough to focus on them, but we're going to focus on those races that have contention at this level. Of course, a lot of these will then be leading up to the general November election, but in the primaries, there are a few races that are just straight pass-throughs for, well, even too many top-of-ballot candidates. I've griped about that plenty of times before. Ed Clore, the hashtag I've been seeing around, honk honk, referring kind of obliquely, or it's becoming its own movement, it does kind of seem like, to the whole Canadian trucker situation, and that getting more focus even after we talked about it last week, but focusing on elections here this week, though there could be some implications from that, don't get me wrong, because we got a lot of races coming up. We're going to be launching into some of those interviews this week, focusing in part on the County Commissioners Court Precinct 4 Republican side of the ballot, with a couple of interviews this week, as well as on some of the candidates, or the candidate challenging on the, again, primary ballot of El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, DMB, but that'll be on Wednesday. And then coming up on, again, Tuesday, we'll have Victor Navarrete and Blanca Trout talking about their positions, coming to hopefully get the Republican nomination to then challenge whomever will come out on the Democrat side of the ballot on, again, district precinct. Keep forgetting they have precincts over there in County Commissioners. Precinct 4, currently held by the incumbent, Carl Robinson, also whom you may recognize the name from having previously served on El Paso's City Council, representing the Northeast District in general. Side note, just because it's related to that, there are those redistricting efforts continuing on the city side of things. Those new maps can be coming out probably over the summer, is the best timeline I've seen so far. So we put up that link before. If anyone wants to know that information, we'll put it up again here, but you can find it on the city's website to figure out how you can be involved, get input, or at the very least make your voice heard when it comes to these redistricting. The initial maps that have been put out so far look decent, but I haven't been doing a block-by-block analysis exactly on it. So there could be further implications coming out of it that I'm not aware of, which is why we definitely want y'all's feedback on that. So take a look at it. Probably posted the link here a little bit later, as we also have Edgar Ortiz over on the Facebook with us. Thanks for joining us over there. So, elections. We got that primary coming up, and, well, it just keeps getting more interesting. The way it's shaping up in ways that I couldn't have fully expected. And yeah, now if you put a gun to my head and say, what will be the most exciting election or a race coming out of this for the people who are excited about that kind of thing? I'm not saying that I'm a political junkie, but I definitely get excited when these kind of situations come up. The Texas 23rd Congressional District is its own interesting one. Again, that's being redistricted and is going to be moving more, well, Fort Bliss isn't entirely within it, but a decent chunk of like Kastner Range, the stuff leading up to the state line, going to be more within that. Interesting focus coming out from, among other things, El Paso Matters on that as of the last week or so, including what is going to be going on with that race. They're going to be talking with one of the candidates on, so we'd encourage you all to go look at that as you're doing your best to stay informed about the issues affecting us here in the borderland. Fort Bliss itself coming into sharp focus for that race, so we'll probably be talking about that a little bit later in this week, and of course announce when we have the rest of the candidates in these competitive races. We're going to get to as many as we can because we do have more time, and we're going to be squeezing in a couple per show if need be, but we'll see what actually happens. I mean, El Paso is such a last-minute town. Not that I'm exempted from it. They expect there to be a lot of enthusiasm, particularly as we get right up to actually Election Day. The conventional wisdom is, at least in El Paso, and at least previously, we'll see how it fares out this time, that's about as many people as voted early voting tend to vote on Election Day. So it's split about 50-50. Whether that bears out this time around, I hope that you all have your plans to vote. I'm only going to mention that like 3 times this show. Don't worry. Make your plan to vote. Make the chart, the party bus, if you're really going to book that. If you'll actually book that, let me know, because I might even want to go on that as long as we're not on the show that one day, just to talk about it. John Browson also chiming and saying, put Escobar in charge of the Lower Valley. I don't think, even if the election moves forward as is expected, if it were to become a challenge between, basically, if she makes it through the primary and then makes it through the general election, that basically is the part that has been largely removed, because previously, if you think about the map of El Paso, in fact, I think do we still have that graphic up here? Let me see if I can find it real quick, because it bears repeating how exactly these maps will work and be moving, because, well, just slightly important. This is not the right map. Okay, I'll find it here in a minute. But John Browson, I see your point making. They're saying give El Paso a real congressman, Tony Gonzalez. So calling for a reshuffling, that's probably a bit further afield than is pretty possible, because, I mean, you take from one area, you got to give it back on the other. Frankly, these maps have been set, but be involved more with your redistricting process next time around, and we'll see what happens. But that's a take I hadn't heard yet, so congratulations for the creativity and originality of it anyway. We'll see what actually happens. But, I mean, those court cases that have been technically filed in El Paso District Court, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not exactly holding my breath on that doing anything to derail this current election or the plan for it. General, probably not either, but there's a lot of time in between those two that more legal kerfuffles could happen, so who knows. Anyway, we are talking about elections in general. A little bit sidetracked there, but coming out of already due for that first break, time flies when you're having fun, I guess. We are going to be talking more about what has become one of the more wild races in our area, the Texas State House District 79, and what the heck is going on there. It's been quite the back and forth. Legal challenges, contentions, and now major statewide groups, coalitions coming in to try to affect the outcome of the race. We'll get into all that and more coming out of this break. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. You're locked in for our show going 4 to 6 p.m. today. Kevin Williams joining us as well. Get into those comments and more. One of the better ways to leave your comments throughout the show. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. But stay tuned. More after this break with more Talk El Paso.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound before Mesa up to Thorne, you've got slow traffic with less than 5-minute delays. Slowing with delays on the Trans Mountain westbound near the Castner Military Range. Heads up for an accident reported Yarborough at Traywood. And emergency medical working on an accident Sunland Park Drive eastbound at Mesa Street. Mesa Hills Drive off of Sunland Park could be an alternate to avoid the slowing. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Win $1,000.
No way. No way. No way.
Oh, baby. Yes way.
No way.
It's a grand in your hand. Listen every hour from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. weekdays for your chance to win.
A grand in your hand is brought to you by Approved Autos. Drive out in your new ride in less than an hour. Choose from every make and model from their super clean, hand-picked inventory and get payments as low as $159 a month. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. If you got your license and you got a job, they smell a deal. The deals are sweeter at Approved Autos, 8498 Alameda.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America. If you're into storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the story of one of the most astonishing games of capture the flag that's ever been played. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
Under Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas economy is full speed ahead. Ranked the #1 state for business every year he's been governor. #1 in exporting products all over the world. #1 in businesses moving to the state. And well over 1 million new jobs since the pandemic. Under Governor Abbott's leadership, the Texas economy is the envy of the nation. But under Biden and Beto, Texas would come to a screeching halt. Open borders causing chaos and endangering our safety. Higher taxes hurting families and businesses. The Green New Deal crushing our economy. On March 1st, vote to keep Texas on the right track. Governor Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
What happens if we find the home we want, but somebody else just got to it quicker? What if we can't sell our existing home on time and we get stuck with 2 mortgages? I know. I've been there. And I have a solution. Listen carefully. You just need to call Brian Birds of eXp Realty. He'll guarantee your home will sell on time or he's going to buy it himself. You'll get the home you want, and you don't have to worry about getting stuck with the burden of 2 mortgages. Hundreds of home sellers and renters trust Brian, and you can trust him as well. Connect personally with Brian today at 751-1500. That's 751-1500. Or go to brianbirds.com. That's Brian, BURDS.com.
Hey, El Paso, have you heard? Sell your home, guarantee. Call Brian Birds. Go to brianbirds.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show. Opening up that phone line a little bit later, as we do, but got a lot of comments coming in over on the social media pages. Calvin Williams, John Brouts, Lieutenant Edgar Ortiz, Ed Clore, Leroy Chuck, and more. Let's get this squad in full effect already here today, including some interesting comparisons or requests, I guess, better way to put it, of congressional redistricting. A little bit too late for this round around. Might have to wait another decade here, or who knows? I've never been a good judge of how legal challenges are turning out. Maybe something will go just wild and crazy with that challenge going on to the Texas congressional redistricting, but I'm not going to hold my breath about it. So that's just some of the stuff we're talking about. Checking in on elections in general. Did have that whole Keep the Lights On tour for Texas gubernatorial, candidate for the nomination on the Democrat side of the ballot. And, of course, locally based Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke. I'm wondering if it's going to be a little bit of a fizzle. That was my analysis coming out of last week, and more statewide analysis, including editor of the Texas Tribune, kind of saying, the fact that it didn't all fall apart has probably worked out in incumbent Texas Governor Greg Abbott's favor. At the very least, I don't expect much movement out of this primary. I know there's a lot of people very impassioned about certain candidates or challenges, or not happy with necessarily how the governor is, but not necessarily wanting the opposite party to come in, but wanting to get primaried out. just not exactly holding my breath about it. I don't want to turn that blue in the face. I only got so much lung capacity. I can't hold my breath on all of these issues here. So just given the fundraising numbers, there is a certain trajectory that can be extrapolated out of it that, yeah, but take something like truly, truly catastrophic to happen, of which this past week could have been one and wasn't. That could have sunk his hopes. So if you were betting on Mother Nature turning in a primary wedge issue into a hot topic for any opponent of the governor, not quite your week, I'll admit, though. Still happy for the way it turned out for Texas in general, including friends that I have back in central and eastern Texas. Glad that they aren't frozen out, but it's a weird when we're talking about politics implications of natural disasters. Anyway, I did have that map. We did have it scrolled away here of what the Texas 16th Congressional District, that the one currently held by Texas Democrat Congresswoman Veronica Escobar. So this was the map as it previously existed, just as a brief refresher for you all. This was the proposal during redistricting that would see Fort Bliss essentially excised entirely from it. That did not end up getting adopted after some of those kerfuffles. Ended up settling on this, seeing still the bulk of the population of El Paso County ending up within it, including decent sections of the airport, Fort Bliss and such, and unfortunately for John Brazelton there, a bit more of the Mission Valley actually ending up within that district, because it had pretty much been not exactly like at San Rosario or Socorro, but pretty close to that or Isleta line drawn across the map to end up making up the Texas 23rd Congressional District. Again, you look at that first one there, just kind of a stark example of what it used to be. That's what it was to what it is now. Definitely some shrinkage going on there. That's what happens when you don't have the same kind of explosive population growth as you see within the rest of the state. I do appreciate the way that our guest from last week, editor of El Paso Inc., Robbie Gray, put it, that El Paso did grow much, and not exactly the narrative that's been getting discussed, but it's kind of being like the little kid, the middle child in a family that grew, a couple of inches over the last year, and then you have a sibling that pops up past 6 foot past you. Just the focus gets lost on you a little bit. So that's the situation that we're in. So there is more voting, probably more people than we're expecting to be, going to be voting for the Texas 23rd Congressional District this time around. And there was I did mention the El Paso Matters story on it. Not much one to correct other people because I make plenty of mistakes myself. If you are reading that one, it did mention there that the Republican challengers are unopposed in the primary. Not exactly correct. The Texas 23rd Congressional District that does have the incumbent, again, Tony Gonzalez, does feature a challenger for that, at least one. Whether or not it'll actually be successful, well, I'm dubious about that as well. Again, these are not actual polling numbers, but from the financial information, you can glean certain details about who is actually, willing to support it here. So when we're looking at the Texas 23rd Congressional District, just weird way, it's a San Antonio to West Texas stretching because, it covers that Big Bend area. Again, Tony Gonzalez does have two challengers, Dr. Alma Arredondo Lynch, based out of San Antonio, and Alia Garcia Ureste, based out of El Paso, according to the filings there. Tony Gonzalez raised just, a little bit like $2.2 million in the period leading up to basically the first month. And the no report filed by Arredondo Lynch and Garcia Ureste, raising just shy of $100,000, but also a little bit hand to mouth there because most of that went out reporting just about $1.5 grand left on hand, while the Gonzalez campaign has $1.3 million left on hand. So that's not exactly going to be an issue for the incumbent keeping that seat there. And then, of course, there are Democrats filing for that race as well. Not as much focused on because that one is still being seen as likely Republican, or at least leaning, or maybe even solid. The ratings and the different systems that put it forth. Any case, it would be, again, betting on politics just raises alarm bells in my head. But if you were going to, or figure out how you could, that would be the smart bet, is that they would end up going through. But all of this is to just lay out a little bit of the playing field that all of these races I would expect a little bit more interest out of, except for a state house race. That, frankly, be honest with me, outside of this program, how often have you even heard about Texas state elected officials? Yeah, be honest with me. I'd love to actually know because I think it needs to be talked about more. But that is also to further exemplify how weird it is that this much stuff is happening within the Texas, I believe it's District, if I'm not mistaken, 74? I'm actually probably wrong about that. Let me actually look it up and not make further of a fool of myself. 79. 74 is the one that got district out, now that I recall. But yeah, we have the incumbent, State Rep Art Fierro, now facing down previous incumbent, but now redistrict out and running within a different district against the incumbent. Mouthful. But Claudio Ordaz-Perez, who had previously been in the 74th, ended up getting district out of that, part of those maps that we just talked about being filed, and now choosing instead to change her primary residence to a different one to allow it to then be within the 79th district for the general election. That was part of the court challenges we've been talking about because Art Fierro was a little unhappy with that decision, legally speaking, saying that this was not allowable as it was too soon before the primary to happen, but courts determined it was well before the general election. So we have ended up in this race, and it's, again, not able to totally say that dollars equals votes, but it sure is helpful and showing a bit of a gap here. So again, the filings that have just come in cover basically the first month of the year, maybe a little bit before, depending on how the campaigns were actually reporting them. But we see that the incumbent, Art Fierro, raised $132 compared to, again, challenger Claudio Ordaz-Perez of $42,000. Just gets a little bit, again, make your own conclusions about it, but I find it useful. Leroy Chuck commenting about the growth of Texas, conservatives fleeing liberal states, going to a liberal city in Texas. Yes and no. I'm sure there's some of that happening, but I mean, well, actually, no. I'm going to disagree with you there because they didn't end up coming to El Paso. So this, I mean, as liberal as you get in Texas, I guess what it is, the blue corner of a state that would be purple at best in any other actual Democrat state. Yeah. So no, they moved here slightly, but for the most part said, no, we're going further, way further east. I mean, there were like so we had about a 4% growth rate. Again, not zero, but not the greatest thing. Would be fine in almost any other standpoint, but there were other parts of Texas that saw like 16% growth rate. So again, you get just outstripped and outclassed real quickly when you're talking with those kind of numbers. So again, the outcome of this being the District 79 being moved out. So there has been besides the fundraising numbers, progressive coalition that has come together in order to focus. It's calling itself the Texas for Better Democrats Coalition, focusing on a couple of races here in Texas, one on a Houston area race, and also on this race for District 79, House District 79 in El Paso, which is almost a reversal of the whole reason, or the supposition anyway, of why Ordaz-Perez ended up getting district out of here. It all seems to center around the en masse decampment of Democrats in the State House of Texas to D.C. that you may have remembered happening last summer. These are further bits of fallout coming from that, because that is being not exactly cited, but clearly strong subtext of why this coalition is focusing on Art Fierro and why it's stepping into, I mean, again, besides the local conversation that may or may not actually happen outside of this program when it comes to elected officials in the State House from our region. When's the last time you remember a statewide group trying to wade into one of these elections either? I'm a little hard-pressed to consider it, particularly on this level, because so Ordaz-Perez is already seeing some better fundraising numbers in her favor. They're looking to spend six figures plus on this. I don't mean to leave you on a cliffhanger, but we are almost overdue for a break here right now. So we'll talk more about this, talk about what exactly they're doing and the mailers you might start seeing and other things on air after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show, taking a lot of comments here over on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Probably play with the phone lines here before too long. Anyway, all that coming up after this break. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. A 56-year-old man in Las Cruces has died after being attacked by 2 dogs. The attack happened outside of Saad Alonzi's home on January 27th. Alonzi had several deep wounds to his legs, according to one of the deputies who responded to the scene. The Doña Ana County Sheriff's Office reports that the dogs are owned by 57-year-old Maria Kelly. Today, El Paso County Commissioners voted to remove the $2 entrance fee at Unscathed Park on Saturdays and Sundays. The fee would still be collected during holidays and special events. According to the presentation, removing the gate fees on the weekend will result in the revenue being reduced by approximately $137,000 annually. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound before Mesa up to Thorn, you've got slow traffic with less than 5-minute delays. Slowing with delays on the Trans Mountain westbound near the Castner Military Range. Heads up for an accident reported Yarborough at Treywood. And emergency medical working on an accident Sunland Park Drive eastbound at Mesa Street. Mesa Hills Drive off of Sunland Park could be an alternate to avoid the slowing. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. So we've finally shifted our weather pattern from that very active weather week we had last week to more of a quiet weather pattern with high pressure back in control. And that basically means slow warming temperatures for us. In fact, we'll even see the return of 60-degree temperatures. For the most part, we should have light winds, but we'll have a couple days with an increase in our winds, giving us breezy to windy weather.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America. If you're into storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the story of one of the most astonishing games of capture the flag that's ever been played. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
Washington politicians are getting richer and richer. A report says Nancy Pelosi could be worth as much as $250 million. And Dr. Fauci just revealed he's worth over $10 million. Not bad for working in public service. If you're tired of the hypocrisy, you need to watch Stinchfield. He's on Newsmax every weekday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and everyone is tuning in. Grant Stinchfield exposes the Washington insiders in his series Hypocrites in America. He even names the hypocrites and reveals their secret agendas. You'll also see Michael Savage and Dick Morris giving their take on Stinchfield. So get Newsmax. It's on every major cable system. If your cable operator doesn't carry Newsmax, tell them you want it. Or watch Newsmax free on your smart TV, like Samsung, Vizio, or LG, and streaming on Pluto, Zumo, Roku, and more. Millions are turning off their old media for Newsmax, a trusted source. Watch Stinchfield tonight and find out why.
I love when my friends stop by, but to help keep my friends and my family safe, I always spray Lysol in my home before guests arrive and again after they leave. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
If you're into storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the story of one of the most astonishing games of capture the flag that's ever been played. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
Text and whatever. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to get at us, a lot of comments and conversation going on right now. Leroy Chuck, Calvin Williams, John Brazelton, Edgar Ortiz, Ed Glore, and more chiming in. Leroy Chuck correcting his previous statement that conservatives aren't fleeing, the conservatives fleeing liberal states aren't going to go to a liberal city in Texas. So giving his little asterisk there, in which case, to a certain extent, well, the majority clearly not. But there is still some growth happening here. Do not get me wrong. Yeah, a lot of it moving to the other parts. Again, the explosive growth, seeing the rest of it. Interesting impacts on our elections going forth, I am sure. So speaking more about that, also talking about that news update there, I don't believe it was stated that it was pit bulls in Las Cruces. Again, I am going to, this is the hill I will die on outside of elections as well, that there are no bad breeds, only bad owners. Because you take any animal and you raise it right, it won't hurt other ones. If you raise it bad, yeah, it probably can. I'm not even just talking about dogs there either. Let's be honest. So, again, you're welcome to your own proposition there, but this is when he ended up starting getting laws banning the ownership of certain breeds and taking the dogs away from longtime owners. And yeah, that's just, I couldn't even imagine such a thing here. So yeah, owner definitely in that situation up in Las Cruces, sounding like they need the book thrown at them, but I'm not gonna blame the animals for that. Just flat out not gonna. That's not a road I'm going down. So some of the conversation going on there, you can chime in if you want to. I just you hit me where I live. I don't even have pit bulls or a any kind of breed. So you got all rescue dogs, all mutts between them, but we love them, and I wouldn't mind having one. That's just my personal stand on it. Anyway, getting back to elections here before I end up on a way over emotional thing. We were talking about the Texas House District 79, that surprisingly interesting race once you get into it because of the focus and the back and forth that has happened on it. Again, to recap slightly here, it is featuring the challenge between the actual district incumbent, Art Fierro, and Claudia Ordaz Perez, who was the incumbent for the District 74, but got district out of that House seat and now decided to run against Art Fierro. And so now, as we were talking a little bit before the break, an outside coalition, statewide coalition, best way to put it, now moving in. And so we talked a little bit about some of the fundraising numbers being stacked. I mean, the balance is heavily in favor of Ordaz Perez right now, but there has been that pledge by, again, the group calling it Texans for Better Democrats Coalition. Interesting phrasing within a traditionally red state, I will agree, and made up by a few progressive groups, Texas Organizing Project, Communication Workers of America, and Working Families Party. They have announced that they are prepared to spend about $250,000 across 3 primaries, funding field and mail programs in each one, according to the Texas Tribune. So, even with that amount of fundraising that appears to have been in Ordaz Perez's favor so far, also the cash on hand in favor, looking at about Art Fierro having about $6,000 in change, and Ordaz Perez having just over $50,000. So, it's a little bit hard to say whether that will truly translate. Again, I mean, people tend to like the people that they have elected previously within our area. On the balance, don't come at me on that comment. But money speaks. And whether or not that'll actually have an impact, I'm going to be watching that race very closely. And we'll probably have some election night coverage for you as well when we're going to at least have some of the results coming in. And that's going to be one I'm going to be checking on more often than not, just to see how those results are coming out. But even with those fundraising numbers, they're again now a major group looking to essentially, again, not a total exact statement out of the group, but strong subtext about what Art Fierro did during the whole decamping of Texas House Democrats to D.C. in protest over the election bills that ultimately ended up getting passed because, well, he came back early. Again, there wasn't a total decampment. There were some Texas Democrats that came back even sooner than him and some who didn't leave, but one of the other ones that is being targeted there specifically for that Harold Dutton representative, state representative out of Houston area, was the one who ended up coming back one of the soonest anyway. But Art Fierro was noted as not being out there until kind of the bulk of people came back. And to his defense, what he has said is that he didn't come back until they had essentially accomplished the goals that they had sought out for doing, stopping the special session, making sure that they had grazed the stink in Washington that they did. Again, there were no individual Democrats' efforts that were exactly successful in that whole endeavor, because ultimately the bill did pass. Ultimately, the elections have moved forward, and ultimately the redistricting went through. So the major goals that would have been politically advisable ended up not working for the statewide Democrats. But still, given the fact that Ordaz Perez, essentially the scuttlebutt is, the talk around political operators within Austin, is that she got district out because she did not play ball with those saying you need to be around for that session. And now we are looking at Art Fierro basically being targeted because he didn't do enough with trying to get rid of that special session or staying with those groups out of town. So the fact that they're going to be pumping in another order of magnitude more money potentially into this race. So but look, check your mailboxes, particularly if you're living in those areas of the Texas 79th House District, which covers a decent amount of town, particularly in the kind of like a central part of town. I'm trying to pull up the latest map here in front of me to take a look at it. As it has been redistricted essentially north of I-10 and in some places north of Montana, covering a lot of that, Fort Bliss area, to be perfectly honest with you. It used to be pretty much in between Montana, I-10, and 375, kind of that not quite triangulated. Now it goes a little bit more north, covering a lot of, frankly, unoccupied area. But central El Paso and a little bit of far east, that Zaragoza triangle as well, now included in it. So that's the area that we're talking about that you should probably be checking your mailbox, particularly if you are on record as a voter. They won't necessarily know how you voted, though you are also going to be on record as what primary you have voted in. As well, Texas has that system where you declare which primary you're going to vote in. That is a matter of record, but then your final vote is not known, or at least not in public records anyway. But if you're on record as being a voter in there, again, including a decent part of Fort Bliss within this, the airports, areas around, basically it's now bounded, dips down a bit below Montana, but covers that Zaragoza triangle, and looks like it kind of traces Dyer, essentially, is what it comes down to. Everywhere within there, you are going to be potentially getting this. John Brazelton not happy with what the Texas legislators did, saying Texas Democratic legislators did nothing but take vacations to Europe in the special session and catch COVID. I mean, they did go to D.C., but yeah, you're right about that second part. There was that little mini outbreak going on. I do seem to recall there being a specific instance of someone leaving the country at that point in time. I mean, it was kind of a wild time back then, if you do recall. It feels like years ago at this point. I'm referring to as back then. But, I mean, we had the repeat of the whole Killer D's scenario that happened back in, was that Rick Perry's time as governor? Scratching the bottom of the barrel of my political experience, or time when I was paying attention to politics anyway. I do remember hearing those stories. A little less contentious as that. At the very least, there haven't been any, criminal investigations that have come out of the use of Texas law enforcement resources related to it. Yeah, that was a wild part that came out of the whole original Killer D's. But again, the actual efficacy of it kind of faltered in the end, because I guess I think about it in a similar kind of way that the whole impeachment thing went out, that sure, it's important to fight what's important to you if you're involved in politics, stand up for what you think is right, et cetera, even if there might be disagreement about exactly what is right. Efficacy is not something that can be ignored. You can't just say, we're going to do this, consequences be damned, because, the consequence is going to come knocking. And if you don't have a path to success, I mean, there was some question, if you recall at the time, of whether or not the national legislature would actually bite on it, and that has been, held up since before then, even up till now. So not exactly great odds for it having happened in the first place in retrospect, but it didn't happen. And we are seeing, again, not even just one side of consequences apparently, but a couple of instances of reaping the whirlwind out of that situation. The fact that it's centered here, that's just the fascinating part to me. I get that's what makes me weird, that I get fascinated by the way our politics work, and the fact that there's so much focus on what is usually not even paid attention to within our local region. Oh, sign me up. Put it straight in my veins. I am here for it. And we'll keep talking about it. Due for that next break right now. Coming out of the break, we'll get to more of those comments on the line, or start opening up those phone lines, because that number to call is 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. A lot more to talk about, a lot going on affecting us here in the borderland. We'll get to all of it as much as we can in 2 hours. Coming out of this break here on News Radio 690.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Watch for slowing on the I-10 westbound before Mesa Street up to Thorn. Look for an injury accident in Sunland Park at Mesa Street with police at EMS on the scene. You could take Mesa Hills Drive off Sunland Park as an alternate way to avoid the slowing. Vista del Sol at George Dieter, an accident reported there. And Yarborough at Traywood, a crash there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America. If you're into storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the story of one of the most astonishing games of capture the flag that's ever been played. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
On the podcast XOXO with Jessica Zor, take a deep dive into the cultural phenomenon known as Gossip Girl, featuring behind-the-scenes stories and conversations with cast members.
Carter was like such a funny character because I remember like going there and everybody was dressed so well, and then like they gave me like I don't even know what they gave me. It looked like I was wearing a rug in that first episode.
Listen to XOXO with Jessica Zor on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
Hey Texas, this is Eric Burton. And I'm Adrian Casada, and we are Black Pumas. We've partnered with Don't Mess with Texas to turn up the message to keep Texas clean. So come on, join hands and let us be united. Let's all do our part in taking care of our beautiful state roads. It's time to step up. Together, we can keep Texas litter-free. Don't mess with Texas, y'all. Peace.
The Tipping Point with Mike Tipton is coming back home to Fox Sports 1380, an iHeartMedia radio station, and the iHeartRadio app every Friday from 5 to 6 p.m. starting January 7th. Do you love sports, food, El Paso culture? Then this is the show for you. I'm Mike Tipton, and I'm inviting you to tune in to The Tipping Point with Mike Tipton on Fox Sports 1380, covering local, statewide, and national sports stories, news, and information that you want to talk about. The Tipping Point with Mike Tipton, Friday afternoons at 5 p.m. on Fox Sports 1380 and the iHeartRadio app.
Louis Gohmert, what a wonderful guy. This is a man who's been a friend of mine from day one.
I'm Louis Gohmert. As a congressman, I worked with President Trump to build the wall.
Thank you, Louis.
He's the only one that might be even tougher than us on the board. As a judge, I applied the law equally, no political favors.
Louis Gohmert, the Texas conservative with Texas integrity.
Ken Paxton's attacks on me are now revealing a real desperation. It doesn't bother me. As a judge, I've stared down even the most hardened of criminals. The fact is, Ken Paxton has been indicted for fraud and is being investigated for bribery. And the Democrats are licking their chops. But Texans shouldn't be punished for his actions. I'm Louis Gohmert, and as your next Attorney General, I'll restore the rule of law, and we will secure the border once and for all. Trust me, I'll be the woke mob's worst nightmare.
Louis Gohmert, Fort Texas. Political ad paid for by Louis Gohmert Campaign.
If you're into storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the story of one of the most astonishing games of capture the flag that's ever been played. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. A lot of ways to interact with the show, including that phone line. Got it open now. The number to call, 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. Checking in on elections as we have coming up, start of our candidate interviews going into this primary election. Again, going to be focusing on those races that are competitive at this level. There's way more than a few that are going to go straight through to the general election, or some that aren't even having an opponent on the ballot currently. I know we've got a little bit interesting with that situation, but up until the election, we're going to be focusing on primarily those races that are going to be at contention in this upcoming election. Fancy that. I know. So we'll get to more of the specifics on that here. But again, coming up this week, going to be talking a little bit about the precinct for county commissioners, that being the seat currently held by Democrat Carl Robinson, also former city council member. But we're going to be talking a little bit about the Republican side of the ballot, starting out with Victor Navarrete and Blanca Trout coming up tomorrow And then getting to that literally top of the ballot race for our area anyway, the Texas 16th Congressional District, currently held by Democrat Veronica Escobar. We're going to be talking with her challenger, DMB. Literally on the ballot that way. I didn't know you could put your initials on there. Maybe I'll run as AJP one day. No, I'm not running for anything. Don't put that juju on me because things are so messed up right now. But I love talking about it. I could, if there's a position I could run for where I am just the official talker of politics, I guess that's what we basically do now anyway. So no need to vote for me. Just tune in. And if you want to call in, again, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. So we talked a little bit about some of the local races, but I can't help but talk a little bit about that tour that has now been launched upon by Democrats candidate and nominee hopeful Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, launching his, in retrospect, not the best timed Keep the Lights On tour, touring at least a couple dozen cities, 2,100 miles. Don't put that on me, Calvin. Calvin Williams commenting a phrase that I don't want to start hearing because, oh, God, I can't even imagine wading into that right now. It's hard enough talking about this every day and then having to deal with, like, other pundits and then lobbyists and then, no, thank you. I do not want that in my veins. I wouldn't have enough time to talk about this stuff. So, yeah, maybe in another life, but not currently here getting into any elected office because it's so much more fun to do it this way. I mean, I do like solutions, but even just talking about the situation, such as, again, in retrospect, in the grand scheme of things, not the best timing, which, again, is a consistent gripe of mine in terms of structure from this and previous O'Rourke campaigns about just not hitting the timing right. And this is definitely an example of it because the whole Keeping the Lights On tour that comes in the aftermath of this whole winter storm that, well, the impacts that are being talked about from a lot of it just kind of didn't happen. It's primarily focused on what happened last year in February when the Texas power grid took some serious hits. Do not get me wrong. There were issues. I was very happy to be here in El Paso and a lot of ticked off people. But given how often the average voter is of a mindset of what have you done for me lately? Well, lately, it's been fine. Pleased and happy people aren't the people that go out and vote, unfortunately. I am very much of opinion that everyone should go out to vote, ticked off or not, but yeah, on the balance, that's not how it works. This is one of the reasons you keep seeing groups and individuals and organizations keep going back to the well for those hot button issues that they can reliably drive people to the polls with because, yeah, the people that are happy and think things are going all right, they're not the ones that are making their ways to the polls, which is, that's just... We can't even focus on that as an issue because there's so much more basic stuff we have to get to even before that. But I have mentioned that we do have we do have the phone lines open. That number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Is it wrong that I'm always, like, from this point forward, going to be having a side eye to anyone saying the phrase, let's go blank? Like, even if it's, like, I've been to a football game where that has been chanted at since the pandemic, but anyone starts saying, like, let's go, I'm going to be looking at them through the side of my eye being like, okay, is this sincere or what are we doing here? So, yeah, that's my response to that phrase here. But call us on the line, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We have a call on the line right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
This is Raul. Yeah, those folks, chanting "Let's go, Brandon," are identifying themselves as fools. You asked the other day why people don't run for office. Well, it might be all the death threats that they're getting nowadays. The number of death threats and threats to Congress has skyrocketed. And then you have the death threats to school board members on the part of these anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, climate change deniers, and believers in the big lie. You have death threats against teachers. Medical personnel are being threatened by people who are in the hospital, and they're mad because the doctors won't give them the stuff they want them to give them. The patient that's here at the hospital, they're telling the doctor what to give them. They all know better than the doctors, too. That's why they didn't take the vaccine in the first place, So the thing is just falling apart. It is very, very sad what we are seeing happening in America. And it's been a sad story for a long time for a lot of people. That's the other really sad part about it. But, really a big breakdown in the ability of Congress and governing bodies to get things done on behalf of the benefit for most of the people. They do a real good job at doing the bidding of the people who are giving them a lot of money.
I mean, that has been, frankly, I think it goes back to Lincoln is one of the term lobbyists, if I'm getting my history right. So that has been a movement for a moment here. And sure, things have gotten worse lately. That number is borne out about death threats to all members of Congress. I think is an important thing to mention out here. It's not even particularly partisan because Congress has never been, at least lately or within my lifetime, the most popular entity. Literally, an opinion poll that is going to live rent-free in my head for the rest of my damn life is that the national polling, it was kind of like an also-ran question about, what is regulative popularity of certain issues, including the communist takeover of America, which at this point in time, I want to say this was like late 2000s, early 2010s, this poll was done. Congress was rated as less popular than a communist takeover of America, like 16% to like 10%. It's bad. So Congress has historic popularity things, but more broadly, to the point you brought up that I made last week about why people don't run for office, that's also kind of part of the problem. It's not even necessarily that people are, I don't want to run for Congress, I'll get death threats, is that they think, I'm going to run for something, so let's go straight to running for mayor or running for Congress as opposed to any other seats. I mean, there are precinct chairs, there's party chair, there are different school board positions. And again, anyone who threatens a school board or a teacher is probably an idiot themselves, but that's by the by. Having questions and demanding change from your school board is a very another part of the process, just to make that very clear here. But there's not people even willing to do that kind of a thing. So when you're talking about breakdown, I think you're talking about it in a different way than when I'm talking about people not having, at the very least in our local area, good sense about what to run for as they end up going into the idea of public office. They kind of go straight to the top here. I mean, there are even some people that we're going to be interviewing that have not necessarily run for a seat before, and we'll ask them about it because that's it can be a little bit screwy reasoning, but we'll get into those interviews here. We got to end up going into that top of the hour break here, so thanks for the point in the call. We will take more calls coming out of the break. The number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso on the top of the hour news here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Loop 375, Joe Battle northbound before Bob Hope. There's a crash that's backing traffic up to the 10 gateway. Sunland Park Drive eastbound at Mesa, an injury accident there. You can take Mesa Hills as an alternate. Viscount Boulevard at Mount Road, an accident reported. And Vista del Sol at George Dieter, an accident there. Pelicano could be your alternate. Kelly Edwards, El Paso traffic.
With PatriotSoftware.com, accounting and payroll, keep your time and money.
Mike Campbell here, serial entrepreneur. I started my first business in the basement of a factory over 30 years ago. We had no heat and no air conditioning. Instead of customers, our office visitors were rats, birds, flies, and snakes. Our office flooded often, and we used blankets as our office walls. We were broke and needed help. That's why I created Patriot Software, to help small business owners with simple payroll for 1 to 100 employees. And if you need help, we will help you for free. Go to PatriotSoftware.com. Use promo code RADIO and get 2 months of payroll processing free. That's PatriotSoftware.com.
With PatriotSoftware.com, accounting and payroll, keep your time and money.
Rich is just a really, really, really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. President Biden says the U.S. and Germany are united in their opposition to a Russian invasion of Ukraine.
We're in agreement that it cannot be business as usual if Russia further invades.
During a White House news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Biden stressed that the U.S. and its allies are willing to continue diplomatic talks with Russia to avert a war. A new survey shows Americans are split on how the president is dealing with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. A joint study by Morning Consult and Politico shows 40% are not in favor of how the president is handling the issue, while 29% say they approve. Police are searching for a suspect who shot up a grocery store in Washington, killing one person and injuring another. The incident happened at a Fred Meyer grocery store in the city of Richland, about 200 miles southeast of Seattle. Cops have released surveillance images of a white male suspect pushing a grocery cart and are involved in the manhunt in the area. Lawmakers are crafting another short-term spending bill to avert a government shutdown on February 18th.
That's when the government runs out of money. House Democrats have introduced a continuing resolution to keep the government funded at current levels through March 11th. House Appropriations Committee Chair Rosa DeLauro says it will give House and Senate negotiators more time to put together a bill that covers funding through September. I'm Lisa Taylor.
A new fundraising page for the Canadian Freedom Convoy is bringing in millions. Donors have raised more than $4.7 million in just a few days. The fundraiser was introduced after GoFundMe decided to redistribute funds intended for the Canadian Freedom Convoy to charities of their choosing. GoFundMe reversed this decision after facing backlash, saying they'll automatically refund the $9 million in donations. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Following New Jersey's announcement to lift masks in schools, Nassau County's Bruce Blakeman wants New York to lift its mandate. Liz Warner reports.
The Nassau County executive says the mandate needs to be lifted in the Empire State.
We are calling upon Governor Hochul to end the mask mandate. Before then, there is no longer any reason why we should have a mask mandate in New York State.
He cited Nassau County's COVID positivity rate, which is below 4%, adding parents want the option to decide whether their kids should wear masks, and they need that option sooner rather than later.
We'd like to see that done now, not in March, as New Jersey's doing, but we'd like to see it now.
United Airlines is teaming up with the PGA Tour to provide travel grants to golf programs at historically black colleges and universities. More than $500,000 in grant money will be equally divided among more than 50 HBCU teams. The goal of the partnership is to help fund travel for tournaments and recruiting efforts. Peloton might be up for sale. Lisa G. reports.
Reports say Nike and Amazon are interested in the fitness equipment company, and Apple might be a possible suitor as well. However, according to sources, Peloton has yet to formally start a sale process. The news comes days after Blackwell's Capital urged Peloton's board to consider firing its CEO and sell the company.
The Razzie nominations are out, and Netflix's Diana the Musical leads the pack with 9 nods, including Worst Picture. Jared Leto, who got a SAG Award nomination for his role as Paolo Gucci in House of Gucci, is getting a Razzie nom for the same role, Worst Supporting Actor. Along with Lady Gaga, the two also share a nomination for Worst Couple. Then there's Space Jam, A New Legacy, also up for Worst Movie, and star LeBron James as Worst Actor. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Just enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Bank. That's bank. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by the Ben Ferguson Podcast.
Coming up on the Ben Ferguson Podcast, we're doing a 5-part expose into the millions of dollars coming from China to the Biden family. And is it time for a special prosecutor? The answer is yes, and I'll explain why. Download the Ben Ferguson Podcast now.
Do you promise to love, honor, and cherish
forsaking all others?
I do.
I do.
And now by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you roommates. Go forth.
That's not the vow you took. But if struggles with CPAP have you and your spouse sleeping in separate rooms, it might be time to look into Inspire. Inspire works inside the body with just the click of a remote. That's right, just a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire. Sleep apnea innovation.
Talk to your doctor to see if Inspire is right for you. Review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
Ah, love is in the air on the free iHeartRadio app. Set the mood for your Valentine with Love Songs Radio, playing the most romantic songs of all time. Feeling nostalgic? Go to ValentineMachine.com. Enter an anniversary date and get a playlist of the most popular love songs from that year. All you need is love and the free iHeartRadio app. Discover music, radio, and podcasts you'll love.
iHeartRadio.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690 KTSM, an iHeart radio station.
I get it. Your desk has been there for you, holding up your computer, your unused stapler, and that plant you forgot to water. But maybe it's time to leave your desk and spend your lunch break volunteering with Meals on Wheels.
Doing Meals on Wheels for me is the joy that I look for at the end of my week. I'll come to the door with one meal and I'll walk away with a full heart.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. That's americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways we try to get it out there, try to have the conversation available to you. A lot of people chiming in right now. Put it over on the Facebook page, Skeptic Squad alive and well with some of these questions there. Again, the whole let's go Brandon thing, I do think people lean a bit too hard into it. The fact that there are flags out there is a little ridiculous. Frankly, just say what you mean is what I'm saying about it. But Kevin Williams echoing the sentiment, yeah, coming out of what it was, that whole situation, that some people just find it funny because, yeah. It means it was a ridiculous situation it came out of anyway, and these things become memes on their own, but Kevin Williams also continuing to announce that he is running for any unchallenged seats, any office. Might have a little bit of difficulty when it comes to some of those judgeships. There are certain requirements put in place, but, well, as I say, way too often these days, stranger things have happened. Talking about elections in general here today, getting a little bit of a status update on some of the ones, and some of the just weirdly active races out there. Like, I would never have expected to talk this much about the Texas 79th House District, but here we are because it is one of the more contentious and focused and money being poured into it races. But of course, the governor's race is interesting enough. So is the attorney's general race. It makes me kind of laugh every time because there was that commercial. I think it ran sometime earlier in the last hour, but from Louis Gohmert, having a replay of a quote from former President Donald Trump during his recent-ish, within the last couple of weeks, rally held here, 3 weeks ago, technically? Anyway, not quite a month. But that said, during that rally, that came about great friendship with Gohmert. That came right after the former president announced his unconditional and entire endorsement of the opponent of the race that Gohmert is in, Ken Paxton. That is an interesting race of its own right, and does seem like Gohmert is one of the more serious challengers. I mean, all of them have some decent challenges because, okay, we've got the incumbent Ken Paxton, of which that commercial anyway does point out some of the ethics issues or investigations that have been protracted and going on when it comes to the Attorney General office under Paxton, kind of in general. Now, he's managed to fend off most of those challenges, hasn't been impacted from his time in office, but we'll see what happens and the way voters decide what to do when it comes to this primary. But also, given the increased otherwise visibility, because the Attorney General, I mean, for a statewide and for a state as big as Texas, isn't exactly an unknown, but a lot more visible, it feels like, lately than usually is, given that whole conference on the border with the dozen attorneys general from other various Republican states talking about border issues. That was usually something that would have been led by Greg Abbott, but ended up being very much prominent within it, Ken Paxton. So there's a little bit of lockstep going on between the attorney general and the governor as well. So I guess that would be not totally upset territory if Paxton doesn't end up getting the nomination and going on to the general ballot again to face whoever the Democrat candidate is. I'll admit I'm not as familiar with that one because this is still Texas, and sure, I'm willing to talk about him, but up until something starts looking serious, we're going to talk about what seems more reasonable when it comes to those statewide races. Open invitation to any of those candidates to come again on the show, by the way. We have had on previously the current Texas Land Commissioner, George P. Bush, who had then, after he appeared on this show, announced his run. Well, he had kind of already indicated his run, but filed for his run after that point when we had him on the show last year, as well as Ava Guzman, having stepped down from the Texas Supreme Court in order to run for that race. So we had them on previously, so if you want to hear from them, go back into our archive, particularly over on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Just search up their names. We got them posted there. Again, I've said it for for Greg Abbott for the most part, but I think it kind of applies to Ken Paxton as well, that underestimating them, these people who have been political animals at the state level in Texas for quite some time, would be a mistake at best and, well, disastrous at worst. Because particularly without that disaster, the conventional wisdom coming out of this winter storm that kind of didn't do that too much. There were some power outages, and the governor hedged his bets, I think, pretty effectively in terms of saying, well, some people might lose, but otherwise it won't necessarily be that bad. Point is that the conventional wisdom coming out of this from otherwise statewide commentators and such is that this is probably going to favor incumbents. That the incumbents are going to very least be able to say, hey, look, we fixed things. Not that things went perfectly, but they basically just didn't have to go awfully. Anything would be better in comparison to what did happen previous winter for the rest of Texas anyway. So kind of a feather in El Paso Electric's hat, not going to lie that we had a much better performance out here, but one of the many, many, many reasons I live in El Paso and not either northern climes or eastern or western climes for that matter, but I digress. Point is that incumbents probably going to be able to use this as a little bit of a boost, if only in the way that it will kind of quash other concerns coming from erstwhile opponents, either within their own party. Again, the right-wing challenges to sitting Republican statewide elected officials has been one of the more interesting wrinkles of this election, and the commentary coming out of it, very amusing to me, but again, I'm weird that way. But just looking at the attorney general amounts raised, yeah, Ken Paxton has a significant war chest, was outraised in that last period of about early to late January, not the full month, was outraised $650,000 to his $330,000 by Ava Guzman, but there's still quite the deficit, and would be a bad idea to forget about the current Texas Land Commissioner, George P. Bush, who still has about $2.6 million left on hand, Ava Guzman $1.3, and Ken Paxton $7.4 million of cash on hand. So if you thought this race was going to go out quietly, I would expect that Paxton probably will keep some in the tank in order, with an eye towards then the general election. But the other opponents, they don't have much to lose if they don't spend everything. And just for the reference here, there are five candidates that are going on the Democrat side of the ballot. The one that has raised the most there, though, is about $60,000, Joe Jaworski out of Galveston, about $100,000 cash on hand. Again, not exactly votes, but certain things can be divined out of that about, what's going to happen in the general, and are you going to get turned into a fine paste on the roadway when the votes end up coming down. We'll talk more about that coming out of this next break. Already due for it here. We do have that phone line open, by the way. A lot more commentary coming in. So if you wanted to comment, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, one ways you can do it. But also, again, phone line open. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso. Not exactly election edition, but you can see it from here after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at Porfirio Diaz, an accident reported there slowing traffic. I-10 westbound at Airway Boulevard, look for an accident blocking the left shoulder. Police on the scene. Loop 375 northbound before Bob Hope, a crash there is backing up traffic to the 10 Gateway. And Sunland Park at Mesa, an injury accident. Police still working that one. Lots of congestion in the area. Take Mesa Hills as an alternate. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
If you're into storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the story of one of the most astonishing games of capture the flag that's ever been played. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
Hey, I'm Ted Nugent. I'm addicted to freedom, and I moved to Texas because I demand freedom. I demand constitutional accountability. We need a warrior that stands up for freedom and will not compromise. That's why I'm on the campaign trail with Colonel Alan West. This guy will stand up with constitutional accountability, and we're going to show the rest of the nation and the world what real freedom and why those words in the Constitution have meaning and iron. Colonel Alan West will fight for those constitutional rights, and I'm going to continue to celebrate the American dream.
Early voting for this gubernatorial primary race starts the 14th of February to the 25th of February. And of course, the election day is March the 1st. I will be honored to serve as your governor, honoring my oath to the United States Constitution and the oath to the Texas State Constitution. God bless you all. God bless Texas. I'm Alan West, and I approve this message.
Political advertising paid for by the Alan West campaign.
Have you wanted to speak a new language but thought it'd be too difficult or take too much time? Then try Babbel. In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel teaches you conversations that you will actually use. With 14 languages and lesson topics like travel, business, relationships, and more, you'll learn what matters most to you. Babbel. Language for life. Learn a new language with ease. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com.
When El Paso Children's Hospital first opened its doors in 2012, they forever changed pediatric healthcare in the region. More families stay in El Paso for specialty treatment instead of leaving town. More children have access to pediatric specialists. 7 pediatric specialty clinics help achieve the best possible outcomes. And there's so much more to come. El Paso Children's Hospital, celebrating 10 years of pediatric specialty care in the region. 10 years of wonder.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show. We do have that phone line open right now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Plus, a lot of comments coming in over on the social pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Skeptic Squad, a lot of conversation about these elections here. About, I think you're referring to what's going on with some of the election performance there. And by the way, during that break there, I'd missed it before, that Alan West commercial. Oh, I just get so excited about this, getting ready for these challenges coming up here. It's exciting for me. I know I'm weird that way, but I like it. So that's what I had fun, and that's a good point. So what I'm saying, point is they ignore or cause a problem, and then when it's fixed, they make it sound like a victory for them. I mean, that's a decently accurate analysis. I wouldn't necessarily say that applies with the winter storm, because, I mean, there was a lot of literal fixing that had to be made there. Whether or not they can totally claim credit for it, debatable. I think it would more aptly apply for the analysis that happened, what happened coming out of, well, the restrictions of 2020, if you may recall, because there was that whole whack-a-mole, what can we do, conflict between the governor and what was going on with different municipalities, including those court cases that, man, I don't even know if they're still going on or not. They may be, for all I'm aware, but completely outside of relevance, obviously, when it comes to either mandates, requirements, those kind of things, because, well, even if you did put them back in place, a whole lot of people, I'm sure at this point, would be saying so what? I'm going to do whatever the heck it is I've been doing to this point. So if they are going on, it would just make me laugh at this point. But I want to say that kind of reasoning would most apply just completely flat analysis. I don't have a hand in this fight, but when it came to those restrictions, there were certain things, primarily for bars. Bars were horrifically hit by the restrictions that came out of the initial pandemic response of 2020, and more than a little bit of that, Texas was put into place by Governor Greg Abbott. Now, of course, he was hailed when they were removed, but there was more than a little bit of analysis from the right side of the aisle, right political ideology, saying that King Abbott with his declarations, I mean, that's part of the reasons that we have seen the West campaign, the Don Huffines campaign, all of those try to then get into that wedge. And again, running against Abbott from the right is, in 2019, I would have laughed you out of the room had you told me that would be the situation we're coming into. Someone's challenging Abbott as being more conservative than him. I wouldn't even have words. I would have just been on the floor laughing. But that's the situation we have found ourselves in, believe it or not. Again, cloudy crystal ball has been even cloudier lately, but hey, we'll get into it. Anyway, we are taking those calls, 915-544-5876-544 KTSM. We have a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
This is Tony Westside. How are you doing today?
Doing all right, Tony. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's the topic today real quick? Because I want my girls to hear me on the air.
We were talking about elections in general, checking in on some of the situations as we're going to be launching into a little bit later this week, some of our candidate interviews for the local positions anyway.
Okay, everybody remember this. Whenever a candidate runs for office and they come out of office richer than when they went in and our taxes didn't go down, they did it at our expense. That's not a good candidate. Don't reelect these people. They're not doing us any good. Wake up, Mr. Schwarzwein. Please save us some money or get out of there. Thank you very much.
No, sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call there. I mean, the local focus is very important. I'm not going to be talking so much about city council coming up because city council is a nonpartisan race. So there are going to be seats, I understand, on the November ballot, but since they don't go through the primaries, they're in a nonpartisan race, so they don't have to go through the Republican or Democrat side of things. Well, they're not going to be on this ballot, but there are going to be some coming up. So once we get closer to that one, we'll definitely be focusing a little bit more on what these records are. The one that is partisan, that affects, well, your tax rates. I think the two taxing entities that consider the most of all, even if it's not totally accurate that they should be the ones most considered, has to be the city and the county. City Council of El Paso and El Paso County Commissioners Court, respectively, they get the most focus put on them anyway when it comes to them setting the tax rates because, well, they do affect the widest swaths of land and territory in their own rights. I mean, El Paso County, of the vast majority of our listening area, among other things, in the city of El Paso, quite a sizable chunk therein, but they're not the most sizable amounts of the taxes. That, frankly, comes from your school district and other various districts you may find yourselves in, such as the public utilities districts, the improvement zones. There's an acronym that I'm forgetting that was referred to by those. But different water utilities, I mean, like the Lower Valley Water Improvement District, things like that end up imposing, on balance, the bulk of your tax burden. So, again, credit where it's due. We did see City Council say to keep the line on taxes, did not increase them. County Commissioners, taking it a little bit further, they said we are going to be revenue neutral with this new budget, which, given the increase in property taxes because of the property valuations that have been creeping up around here, yeah, that's a fun one to remember about and something I am not totally enthused about when I'm considering entering the housing market, being like, oh boy, that'll be a fun thing to have to figure out how much we'll have to pay taxes year over year. Separate issue. But they ended up saying we are not going to increase our budget at all, meaning they actually saw a decrease in taxes. So credit where it's due, even if there are some significant caveats that come along with that. One of the other more significant things to address your other point there about the pay and how much they're making, I think you're having a little bit more eye towards, I think it was one of the promos we had at the top of the hour there, talking from one of the podcasts on the iHeartRadio network about how much money certain people have made when in national elected offices, which is, I just got to say flat out, very in favor of anything moving towards the idea of no longer allowing congressional insider trading. But that's, again, somewhat of a separate issue. Locally speaking, City Council, County Commissioners Court have very different ways that they set their pay and compensation rates. it's one of the reasons that the compensation is actually pretty stark difference between county commissioners and city council. City council is by charter having to be approved by voters. So they still have to bring it up. We don't approve it every time because I'm sure there have been more than a couple of times we would have zeroed out that compensation given the responses that happen sometimes. But as it is, the way it works is that if they are putting up a pay increase, they got to justify the hell out of it because it then goes to the voters. Finally did have one over the course of this show because it used to be, decently below like the median income of El Paso. It was in like the mid to lower 20s per year for being on city council, which didn't make El Paso totally a part-time city council. But I mean, like back in my TV reporting days, I would often have interviews with Dr. No, if you remember him, out at his clinic because he was still doing that. Something to be said for it, but the comparison I would make is that imagine for an elected official in that kind of position, the qualifications you want to have. List them all out, even just in your head. And now consider for that kind of a position, what you're asking for, what should that kind of a position entail in pay? And then are we anywhere near that when it comes to the compensation being given? Yes, there are more conversations to have about, okay, but servant leadership, those, going forth and making their ability to do so, not based on the compensation, but rather their interest in wanting to serve the community. Those are certainly important concepts. But if you're making it that the people who have that kind of qualification can't even focus on that, then you're just relegating that qualities to a very small subset of those that are either independently wealthy, retired, outside sources of income, et cetera, et cetera. So it just makes it less feasible for the general person to do it. Juxtapose that with county commissioners court, where they do set their own pay rates, and they are in the county judge, the last check was in low six figures, and county commissioners approaching there, I want to say 70s, but I realize I haven't actually looked at that in the last year or two, so that may have changed slightly, but sizable difference, as you can tell there. Two of those calls on the line as well, and a lot of comments coming in as well. John Brownston, Calvin Williams, Leroy Chuck, and more. So I'll get to those calls right now. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Do have a call on here line right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
This is Victor Avila.
Hey there, Victor. What's on your mind?
I really enjoyed the subject that you're talking about, especially when it comes to candidates going for elected office that want to actually work at that office. I happen to be a candidate for Texas Land Commissioner. I know you're focusing a lot on local elections, but I'm a native El Pasoan, and that's the number one thing that I kind of, came across as I looked at running for this important office is that most of the people that have run for this office before are people that want the office to gain political, steps, higher office once they get into this office, not to actually work and do the scope of activities of the actual office that they're running for. And so, I'm so glad that you're bringing that up because it's so important as a Texas Land Commissioner. The General Land Office is so important in the aspects that it deals with our Texas land, the border, our veteran benefits, and our oil and gas industry. That's what I'm running for, to be able to work that, not to gain political gain in any other office after that.
Well, I mean, the direct comparison can be seen because it is an open seat right now, as there has been the current Texas Land Commissioner announcing his run now for Attorney General. So, yeah, that can be pretty easily seen how that can progress there. But tell you what, we're definitely going to want to talk further about this. Appreciate the call here and have given out that open invitation to any candidates for statewide office to call in. So, tell you what, I'm going to put you, we're coming up on the need for the break here. I'm going to put you on hold. I want to get your information so we can schedule something for a full interview here, because definitely want to talk about the candidates. El Paso base is a nice plus, but anyone willing to talk to our local audience about it more than a little bit in favor of. So thank you for the call and stay on the line for me. All right.
Thank you.
I appreciate it there. I think that's I've been getting very in favor of people being responsive to their community. So we'll get to more of that after the break here. We'll take that, I guess, a little bit early, but want to get that information. We got more calls on the line. And again, if you're wanting to call in, you are able to do so. 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olgain with your KFOX 14 News Update. A 56-year-old man in Las Cruces has died after being attacked by two dogs. The attack happened outside of Saad Alonzi's home on January 27th. Alonzi had several deep wounds to his legs, according to one of the deputies who responded to the scene. The Doña Ana County Sheriff's Office reports that the dogs are owned by 57-year-old Maria Kelly. Today, El Paso County Commissioners voted to remove the $2 entrance fee at Unscathed Park on Saturdays and Sundays. The fee would still be collected during holidays and special events. According to the presentation, removing the gate fees on the weekend will result in the revenue being reduced by approximately $137,000 annually. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olgain.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
There's a crash that's blocking the right shoulder, I-10 eastbound at Porfirio Diaz. It's backing up traffic, too, all the way back to Hawkins. I-10 westbound at Airway Boulevard, an accident blocking the left shoulder there. Heads up for a crash at Kenworthy and Diana, police on the scene, and Zaragoza at Pebble Hills Boulevard, an accident reported there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. So we've finally shifted our weather pattern from that very active weather week we had last week to more of a quiet weather pattern with high pressure back in control. And that basically means slow warming temperatures for us. In fact, we'll even see the return of 60-degree temperatures. For the most part, we should have light winds, but we'll have a couple days with an increase in our winds, giving us breezy to windy weather.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
If you're into storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the story of one of the most astonishing games of capture the flag that's ever been played. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
Hey Texas, this is Eric Burton, and I'm Adrian Casala, and we are Black Pumas. We've partnered with Don't Mess with Texas to turn up the message to keep Texas clean. So come on, join hands and let us be united. Let's all do our part in taking care of our beautiful state roads. It's time to step up. Together, we can keep Texas litter-free. Don't mess with Texas, y'all. Peace.
Do you promise to love, honor, and cherish, forsaking all others?
I do.
I do.
And now, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you roommates. Go forth.
That's not the vow you took. But if struggles with CPAP have you and your spouse sleeping in separate rooms, it might be time to look into Inspire. Inspire works inside the body with just the click of a remote. That's right, just a button. No mask, no hose, just sleep. Inspire. Sleep apnea innovation.
Talk to your doctor to see if Inspire is right for you. Review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
Hey guys, it's Edge Martinez. My family's gathering in the kitchen. It's our favorite place to catch up. Keep germs out. I use Lysol on countertops, tables, and the fridge handle. Nothing kills more viruses on more surfaces than Lysol disinfectant spray. Lysol, what it takes to protect. Use as directed.
Right now at Wendy's, see why everyone is raving about their brand new fries. Natural cut, skin on with a hint of sea salt, and guaranteed to be hot and crispy, or they'll replace them. You know, the way fries should be. Try Wendy's guaranteed hot and crispy fries today at participating U.S. Wendy's. This report is sponsored by Wendy's new hot and crispy fries.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways you can tune in, chime in, participate in the show. Do those phone lines open now. The number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Again, I've said it, and I will follow through on that promise of open invitation to any of the statewide candidates, anyone on the ballot competitively for the primary, but particularly for the later on general election. We'll definitely, anyone on the ballot, be happy to talk with. But yeah, any of those statewide candidates got some campaigning through town right now, apparently. So appreciate that call from Victor Avila there. Planning some more with him. Don't worry, took his information. Already have some preliminaries. Got to continue with the show here in the meantime, though. So if you're wanting to call in, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Good point. Apparently, event being talked about. Michael Pattis and James Radcliffe referring to event out there. Seeing Victor Avila speak last night. Apparently, he's campaigning in town right now. So again, appreciate the call. But Michael Pattis also mentioning Derek Zubelid running against Cesar Blanco, I believe. Zubeldia, rather. Mistake on my part. For the Texas Senate District 29. Them both running unopposed in those elections, but a little bit of campaigning never hurts. Particularly as you then already know. I mean, it makes it simple if you already know who your opponent is for the primary, right? So we're focusing on primarily the contended primary races, of which there are numerous, but in my opinion, not quite enough. But, well, let's at least get up to the polls. Let's start there. Anyway, if you wanted to call in during the show, again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, good afternoon. One of the things that I look at in candidates, especially county commissioners, is their support for law enforcement. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, a particular county commissioner who wanted to do away with housing federal prisoners.
Yes, I believe you're talking about also general issues going on with the entire downtown jail complex that is run by the county, and that I believe you're talking about former County Commissioner Vince Pettis.
Yes, I believe so. The county jail is one of the biggest chunks of change. Well, it is the biggest budget for the county to speak of. Now, taking away a contract like that would have caused a severe deficit, possibly having to lay off detention officers. And one of the things that I'm also concerned about, and I've said it before many times, is the reinstatement of COLA for the cost of living increase for the county retirees. Reason I harp on that too much, a lot, is because look at what's going on. Look at what's going on. Price of gas has gone up.
Oh, yeah.
As of February 4th, 2022, the price of a barrel of crude is now $92.34 a barrel.
Yeah, hasn't been that way in, well, a while now, at least within this last couple of political cycles. So, yeah, and everything, of course, goes downstream from there. I can't think of anything in particular that, very personal experience here. Usually on Fridays, I work late here at the station, and I end up ordering from restaurants nearby across the street. There was something I got that had been a reasonable price pre-pandemic, essentially, that I ordered again, and the spouse ended up saying, "What the hell did you order that cost this much?" I was like, "Well, it's what I always get." "Oh, right, but it's like $50 now, so I'm not doing that anymore." Just personal example.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And then, like I said, prices are going up, but salaries are not going up. They're staying the same, and everything costs a lot. If you look at the gasoline down the street from your old studios, what is it? $3.59 a gallon this morning.
Oh, I try not to look. I mean, I have often been guilty of making the drive over to planning a trip over to the east side, but then going to get some of that. I don't know why it's cheaper on that side of town. It just ends up being, but yeah, it's been pretty bad around here. I'll agree.
Yes, definitely. Anyway, those are my concerns and my talking points, and I thank you for allowing me to speak on your show.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the call there. I mean, a lot of stuff to get into here, some more calls for more interviews and things here. Comment on this from earlier from Leroy Chuck saying, "Only vote for candidates that have a letter by their name, don't even look at their history or policies they promoted." I am going to give you as much benefit of the doubt as I'm willing to give anyone here and say that is a facetious statement, and if it's not, we're going to have some words. I will run for office specifically to put murals around your house at this point, if that's really how you feel about it. Oh, boy. Some calls for more people to be interviewed. I mean, okay, we got a lot of races we're going to try to get to here, and we're going to focus primarily on the competitive ones ahead of the election. We can squeeze another two in if we feel we've done a good job maybe we'll look at some others, but we've got a lot of ground to cover in the meantime, and I'm sure there'll be more updates there. So no promises, but we'll get to as much as we can reasonably within time. Leroy Chuck just taunting me here. Again, if you wanted to call in during the show, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. So, I mean, okay, let's just talk about that in its own aggregate here a little bit. About that race that Derek Zubeldia is running for. He's running unopposed in the Republican primary for that Senate District 29, that also Cesar Blanco, the current incumbent, is running unopposed on the Democrat side of the ballot. At the very least, I am happy that there is going to be contention then in the general election in November. It's a good thing, because it just doesn't show well up for... I know there's a lot of comparisons drawn to what El Paso actually supports, but I don't think it really bears out that way. I think it comes down more to how engaged people actually are, or how willing they are even to think about political engagement, that we don't have certain races that are contended. I mean, the one that still sticks in my mind and is still very relevant is the current sitting district attorney was elected through solely the Democrat side of the primary ballot for that year, because there was no Republican opponent nor any serious independent challenger. I mean, as much as you're maybe joking, Leroy, the fact that you're saying you only vote for based on the letter by the name, I mean, there's a reason Texas got rid of straight ticket voting, because there's more than a few people there. I'm not going to call it totally altruistic as we want voters to be more informed. I think it was a little bit of, let's make sure Democrats don't get as much support as they do by forcing people to go down the ballot, just given the way Texas works. Debate me if I'm wrong. Or in general, just making people actually make the selection. But I don't think it was and therefore they will have to pay attention, because that's just kind of not how it works. Anyway, the point is that at the very least, there are people who used to do that and probably still will do that. So as much as you're joking, or at least I hope you're joking, that does end up being how it works. So the fact that we have someone at least running on either side of the ballot, very, very good thing in my mind, because when we don't have that, at the very least it questions why, but furthermore shows to the general voter, the person who's even maybe just slightly paying attention, that, well, there's just no activity going on there. Frankly, I'll admit it, I have tended to vote in the Democrat primary because there have been a significant amount of local elections that have been decided solely through that ballot. The fact that any have is mildly disturbing to me. So, again, there's a whole... If I had a magic wand, I'd be making some serious changes when it comes to our political process and how people are actually involved. I'm not saying I'd do the whole Australia voting system thing, but boy, would I like to dream about it. If you're not familiar, Australia requires you to vote. Like, it's not you'll go to jail if you won't vote. You'll be ineligible for umpteen other kind of things, federal programs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a push, not a pull to the poll. But they also do the ranked choice voting, which means that you have to put a number by each candidate. So imagine you're in these, 8 candidate elections, and you're having to put a ranking by each of them. I mean, it ends up in a phenomenon called donkey voting, where someone will put the one by the candidate they actually like and then just go down the rolls for the rest of them, which has led to its own interesting situation of some people changing their names in order to be ranked higher on the ballot, therefore to get more of the donkey vote. There is no political system that does not have weird intricacies once you get down to the nitty-gritty of it. But again, the general concept here is that people have to vote and they have to pay actually attention to who they're voting for. This has led to certain weird things such as direct democracy movements down there in Australia, which is, sure, it's representative government, but the representative has basically said, I will vote however our internal party polling says I should on any issue. Weird situations. I'm not saying I want necessarily all of that, but the idea of it being less of I'll bother to go vote, and more about, well, I have to go vote. You kind of go into shopping cart theory here. There's no penalty if people don't vote, but it's also generally considered, at least for people that I talk with and consider educated and intelligent people, that if you don't vote, it's not a good sign. Now, we got a lot more structural to even get to that, but so let's work on at least focusing on getting out the vote for this election. I want there to be a great showing in this primary. So I know it sounds halfway joking, but seriously, if you're going to follow through with that plan for the party buzz, you better be doing it because, amongst other things, just on that state level ballot, State Reps Lena Ortega and Joe Moody not getting not drawing Democratic opponents for their seats in District 77 and 78, and no Republican challengers for those races either. So there's some gains to be done. Again, not even going straight to the top of the ballot. State House gets way ignored in our area as it is, but that would be not necessarily the first one I would run for. If I am not, but if I were to, wouldn't maybe go straight for that, but it's a strong contender because of the lack of focus that happens on it otherwise, maybe just outside of this show. Michael Patter is saying many South American countries require people to vote. They all require ID, and if you don't vote, you pay a fine. Again, there'd be various problems involved in that, but I would like there to be more incentive. Frankly, the way I'd love it to be, that I've seen suggested before, is a free beer if you've got your I voted sticker on in El Paso. Let's get that going. Let's get a little bit of incentive going that way, because I think it's been correct. The analysis has been said, possibly semi-joking before, about you want to make sure people go out and vote in El Paso, free beer. You know what? I'm down. Let's do it. Let's make that happen. Maybe not for this primary, but hey, the general's coming. Come on, let's get it going. Anyway, got to be back after this break with more Talk El Paso. Rounding out the end of the show, talking more about what we got coming up this week and more. Oh, it's a good time here on Talk El Paso, so stay tuned. Here on News Radio 690, KTSM.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
There's a crash that's blocking the right shoulder, I-10 eastbound at Porfirio Diaz. It's backing up traffic, too, all the way back to Hawkins. I-10 westbound at Airway Boulevard, an accident blocking the left shoulder there. It's up for a crash at Kenworthy and Diana, police on the scene, and Zaragoza at Pebble Hills Boulevard, an accident reported there. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Don't drive much, don't pay much with pay-per-mile insurance from Allstate. Life is good when you're in the driver's seat. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
Under Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas economy is full speed ahead. Ranked the #1 state for business every year he's been governor. #1 in exporting products all over the world. #1 in businesses moving to the state. And well over 1 million new jobs since the pandemic. Under Governor Abbott's leadership, the Texas economy is the envy of the nation. But under Biden and Beto, Texas would come to a screeching halt. Open borders causing chaos and endangering our safety. Higher taxes hurting families and businesses. The Green New Deal crushing our economy. On March 1st, vote to keep Texas on the right track. Governor Greg Abbott, securing the future of Texas.
Political ad paid for by Texans for Greg Abbott.
What happens if we find the home we want, but somebody else just got to it quicker? What if we can't sell our existing home on time and we get stuck with 2 mortgages? I know. I've been there, and I have a solution. Listen carefully. You just need to call Brian Birds of eXp Realty. He'll guarantee your home will sell on time, or he's going to buy it himself. You'll get the home you want, and you don't have to worry about getting stuck with a burden of 2 mortgages. Hundreds of home sellers and renters trust Brian, and you can trust him as well. Connect personally with Brian today at 751-1500. That's 751-1500. Or go to brianbirds.com. That's Brian, BURDS.com.
Hey, El Paso, have you heard? Sell your home guarantee. Call Brian Birds. Go to brianbirds.com.
KTSM AM El Paso is News Radio 690, an iHeart radio station.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The first school for blacks in El Paso had only 7 students and was opened in March 1883 in the home of John Smith. Andrew Morlock was both principal and teacher. The school was given the name of Douglas School in tribute to Frederick Douglass, a well-respected statesman and orator and one of the country's strongest abolitionists. 484 students graduated from the school until 1955, when Black students were finally integrated into all El Paso schools. Some of the famous graduates of Douglas were actor Henry Thomas, who appeared in Gone with the Wind and Road to Zanzibar, William Roseborough of the Harlem Globetrotters, and Nolan Richardson of UTEP basketball fame.
The El Paso History Show with Jackson Polk and Melissa Sargent is sponsored by Patrick Tuttle, Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate, Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant in Cañutillo, Mission Del Rey Southwest for gifts and decor, Keystone Heritage Park, and Monterey Asset Management. It's the El Paso History Show, Saturday morning at 10, streaming live on Facebook and on News Radio 690.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Your host, Andrew J. Polk, coming around the bend toward the end of our program here today, as we are 4 to 6 p.m. these days. Coming from James Radcliffe over on the social media, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, concerned about voter ID connected to the internet. So the way the machines work here in El Paso, to my understanding, this had been in place since, in effort since before 2012, last time I had the chance to talk with the El Paso County Elections Administrator. But essentially the way El Paso machines work, if you've gone to vote recently, which all of you should have, #soapbox, you go out there, you fill out your ballot on the screen, and then prints out a sheet. You then scan that sheet into the ballot machine that then keeps the ballot. So it's both an electronic balloting system plus the backups there. I'd go with another comment about a trailer coming up. I'll have to take a look at that here before too long. But that's the way El Paso County machines work. So I kind of like the idea of that because it does allow for there to be both the digital, so it's not a total hand balloting, the dragging on of counting that was much disliked from here. Leroy Chuck doubling down on the whole plan for beer returns and beer incentives for voting in El Paso, saying I'd even make it a 16-ounce beer and also give a coupon to get a six-pack, but you have to vote in the primary and the general. We're getting complicated here, but I think there's something to it. What are you actually verifying it, though? Do you have to show up within the 2 stickers, primary and general? I guess there's a way you can make sure it's an El Paso sticker, because another cool thing about El Paso is that we have our own I Voted stickers. County Commissioners Court started this at least a couple of years ago. We'll have a design contest to get the design for the I Voted sticker, and they announced the latest one here before too long. Before this election here, don't have it in front of me, but bring that up for next one here. So as a reminder, in our upcoming shows, going to be talking more about these elections, talking with the candidates. Again, our focus primarily going to be right now anyway on those contested races, because if they're going straight through to the primary, we'll get to them. Don't worry, particularly as we get closer to going straight to the general election and otherwise, meaning they don't have a primary opponent. Those are going to be not the ones we're primarily, no pun intended, focusing on right now. We're going to talk about those races that do have opponents and challengers going into it. So that's why we'll talk about Texas Land Commissioner as well. Glad to know those candidates are coming through town as well, because, hey, the focus on it is Kevin Williams escalating even further. They come with voter tacos, and now the idea of drunk voting coming across as well. Listen, if we have enough of a problem, enough people to go out and vote, that some of the ones doing it drunk, it's sure not a great absolute situation, but I will take it personally as a positive that someone had enough presence of mind while drunk to still go out and vote. That's some commitment. Please don't vote drunk. At the very least, do not be don't be mean to the poll workers. Most of them are volunteers. The election judges that are in the different actual precinct areas doing the voting. Be nice to them. They are there and doing a very important job for all of us here. So if you're going to be drunk, just be nice about it as much as you can. If you're a mean drunk, don't do it, is what I'm saying here. But, I mean, there are some ideas, a 50-50 chance to pick the right guy, Leroy Chuck further saying. Again, if people are still going out to vote and have the presence of mind to do it while drunk, I will take that as a positive of the movement of, because, I mean, what do people do when they're drunk? They act on their most base and most, basic desires. So if that involves voting, you know what? Great. I am in favor of that kind of a mentality, if not totally the implementation. Again, maybe don't go vote drunk. Drink after. Treat it as a reward. That's why you have to do the that's why you have to do the I voted sticker to go and do it. Let's get this going. Let's make this a thing. Why not? We got to do something here in El Paso to get more people out to the polls. Again, if you haven't heard me say it lately, 3.5% and 4.5% turnout for our last two elections. Look, I get that there are concerns about integrity of the vote and the way they're tabulated. I have basically zero of those concerns here locally because not enough people actually go out to vote for anyone to need to even conceptually do that kind of a thing. Come on. Occam's razor here. Is it that there is some ingrained conspiracy locally to change other things, or is it just that no one goes out to vote? There's a real simple answer there, but we'll get more into that here in future shows as well. A couple other things I want to mention here locally. If you're the kind of person that has, certain legal issues going on for you, Justice of the Peace have announced their 2022 warrant amnesty program going on in our area. So if you have warrants out for your arrest, and they've got the list that are going to be posted up. They will be doing the, what's the actual term for it? The posts in the paper, I do believe, saying that these are the people with warrants, so you're going to be known about. But it's running February 7th through February 28th. The warrant fee and the failure to appear case will be dismissed with full payment of the original case, so that going on right now. If you don't drink, if you drink, don't vote, do the watermelon crawl. That might be a bit before my time here, but so that's an important one. I know that some of you might have too many traffic tickets out there, so get that taken care of. And a couple other things, including over from El Paso Inc., them mentioning that preview that we got from editor Robbie Gray last week, that the San Diego holding company bets on border business. The locally based, previously plastic molding technology sold to the San Diego-based holding company Tide Rock Holdings, and other investment happening in our area. So some more positive things going on. Some of our other topics that we discussed a decent amount, not as much focus going on today, but we'll get to more of those in future shows. Again, coming up this week, more talk with the candidates that are going to be on the ballot in the primary. So pay attention to that. Coming up tomorrow, again, we're going to be having Victor Navarrete and Blanca Trout for the Republican nomination for the Precinct 4 County Commissioners, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, that does it for our show here today. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in. However you did so, appreciate everyone who did call in, comment, participate in the show. You really do help make it what this is. Do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. Otherwise, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road. And have a great evening, y'all. See you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound is slow from a crash at Porfirio Diaz. It's blocking the right shoulder. There's a bit of a backup. I-10 westbound at Airway. A crash there is blocking the left shoulder. I-10 westbound from Wrestler to Thorne. It's stop-and-go traffic with 5-minute delays. A crash reported downtown Paisano at Stanton. And police are responding to an accident via Loma Drive at Viamonte. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
What's done more to improve overall health and wellness? Modern medicine or personal hygiene? Actually, it's both. But considering that bathing went mainstream in the 1800s and brushing your teeth in the 1900s, isn't it time for something new, like cleaning your nose? After all, your nose is the body's air filter for trapping dirt and germs, the first line of defense against allergens, bacteria, and viruses from getting into your lungs. But how do you clean your nose? With Navage. Navage isn't medicine, it's more like plumbing. Navage uses powered suction to pull saline in one nostril to the very back of the nose where germs can get trapped and multiply. And then out the other nostril, flushing out mucus and microbes so you can breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. Join over 2 million others and find out for yourself how refreshing and easy to use Navage is. At Navage.com, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
If you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my friends.
For my community.
For everyone here. We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies us. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
Stay informed at KTSMradio.com.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
If you're a single man under the age of 35, you'd probably like to know what the ladies are looking for on an online dating site. A guy who had a few drinks and later got pulled over for buzzed driving. See, that could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. And doesn't a guy who's back living with his parents but calls them my roommates just scream Mr. Right?
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway
News
Traffic
on the
Safety
hour
Administration
and the half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. President Biden says there can be no business as usual with Russia if there's an invasion of Ukraine. During a White House news conference with new German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Biden advised American citizens in Ukraine to leave. One person was killed and another was critically wounded in a shooting this morning at a Fred Meyer store in Richland, Washington. Richland Police Corporal Chris Lee said they're working to learn what led to the shooting.
All that we saw on video was a conversation. We don't know what that conversation was.
The person of interest fled the scene, and police are trying to find that person. Japan and Israel are joining the CDC's list of highest COVID-19 risk countries. The two countries were moved to the level 4 list Monday, along with Cuba, Armenia, Libya, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Several Democratic governors are joining their Republican counterparts and ending mask mandates. Governor Ned Lamont of Connecticut said he will drop the mask mandate next month. Derek Chauvin's trial judge is likely the one who signed the warrant leading to the deadly shooting of Amir Locke. Lisa Taylor has more.
A Minneapolis police officer shot and killed 22-year-old Amir Locke last Wednesday as part of a no-knock warrant leading to several protests. The Hennepin County District Court said the signing judge would have reviewed and signed off on such warrant applications. Judge Peter Cahill was the signing judge last week. Cahill recently sentenced Derek Chauvin to 22.5 years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Spotify has taken down more than 110 episodes of Joe Rogan's podcast after criticism from a number of musicians and celebrities. Spotify seemed to be moved by Grammy-winning singer India Arie. The artist asked the platform to take down her music because of what she called Rogan's language around race. She was referring to his repeated use of the N-word in old podcast episodes. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Authorities in Tijuana are breaking up a migrant encampment near the U.S.-Mexico border.
Tijuana police and the Mexican National Guard kicked out 381 migrants from the El Chaparral encampment near the border Sunday. The migrants and their belongings were transferred to 3 different shelters, and then the encampment was demolished with heavy equipment. The mayor of Tijuana says the breakup of the encampment was because of health reasons and not due to any alleged pressure from the U.S. government. Some of the migrants said the operation was inhumane because it happened at dawn while children were still asleep. I'm Eddie McCoven.
A Democratic candidate for Georgia governor is facing criticism for a maskless photo. Stacey Abrams posted a now-deleted image on Twitter Friday after a visit to a Metro Atlanta elementary school where she was speaking about her book and Black History Month. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and former Senator David Perdue, both Republicans, have criticized Abrams for her apparent snafu. New York City Mayor Eric